I'd like to call this meeting to order. Tonight we have the presentation of our colors from North Buncombe High School. This group is instructed by Commander Master Chief Edward Marino, and he is a United States Navy retired person. So, will you please rise?
Colors, attend, hut, carry, colors, ready, cut, forward, march. Colors, off, left, face, present, colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors, ready, cut, right, face, forward, march.
I ask that you remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good evening, board members. As a part of my duties tonight, I am going to run the officer elections for the board. We're going to start with the chairperson, and then we'll move into the vice chairperson. Are there any nominations for chair of the Buncombe County Board of Education?
I'd like to nominate Ann Franklin for chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Franklin, do you accept?
I do.
Are there any other nominations? I'll close the floor for nominations. All in favor of Ms. Franklin for chair of the Buncombe County Board of Education, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now on to the vice chairmanship, or vice chair. Any nominations for the vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Cindy McMahon for the position of vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Do you accept?
I do.
All right. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Then I'll close the floor. All in favor for Ms. McMahon for vice chair of the Buncombe County Board of Education, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations. And I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I'm seeking approval of the agenda, and we are adding an item to the action agenda entitled Approval of the Low Performing School Plans. And I would entertain a motion to approve this agenda with this addendum.
So moved.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move to superintendent's comments.
Good evening, everyone. So excited to start my comments out talking about global education. That's a true passion. And so earlier this afternoon, we had a celebration for our 6 Global Educator Digital Badge earners. That's a big thing, guys, let me tell you. And there's an additional 28 teachers and administrators in Buncombe County schools that are currently completing the process to achieve that badge. We're very, very proud of each and every one of you. We're excited to present these individuals to our parents and stakeholders. We'll do that later in the agenda, and we are certainly pleased to have as our guests Helga Faciano, who is a Special Assistant for Global Education at North Carolina DPI. And I hope you didn't bring any snow with you, Helga, but we're excited to have you here from Raleigh. And I do want to say this. There are, in my opinion, there have been two significant leaders in the state of North Carolina regarding global education in public schools. And one of those we're honored to have tonight. The other is Mr. Wayne McDevitt, who has served so diligently as our State Board of Education representative, and he was unable to be here tonight. But Helga, you and Wayne have just taken up the cause and championed, and for that we so thank you. For what it's meant for all of our kids here in Buncombe County Schools. So again, we're so glad to have you tonight. I also want to recognize one of our board members, Ms. Amy Churchill. She was recently appointed to serve a one-year term as the treasurer for the North Carolina School Boards Association. And guys, that's a pretty big thing too. The North Carolina School Boards Association, in terms of champion, has been a true champion for public education in this state. So we wish you well in that appointed position. Winter weather. Just a reminder that as that possibility is fast approaching, it's important to make sure parents that you have provided the school or schools that your children attend with as updated contact information as possible. I also want to promote to everyone an excellent article that our communications department has placed on our district website. It's entitled "Preparing for Winter Weather." And it really is a very good, concise resource, informative, and it talks through about how the decisions are made, and probably more importantly, how those decisions are communicated out to each and every one of you. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And also a reminder tomorrow that it is an early release day as well. Middle and high school all-county band, I think there were a few board members that attended that concert. It was at A.C. Reynolds High School last Tuesday. We actually had 3 concerts. They needed 2 concerts for the high school students, one for middle school, and they had guest conductors, very prestigious guest conductors from across the country that came in and worked with our students and just did an incredible job. I'm proud of all of our principals who were in attendance. Ms. Sellers, thank you for being such a wonderful host. I also want to thank Robert Waller, who is our cultural arts specialist for the district, and Robert did a wonderful job of coordinating all of that. That's a lot of work. We actually bring those students in, and they have about a 24-hour period to practice, and it's incredible the product that they provide in those concerts. Speaking of rentals, I think there's a reason Miss Sellers has her green and gold on. If you had an opportunity to see her live on WLOS, what a great job she did. And she's a little excited tonight, as many Rocket fans are, because they are headed on Saturday to the state 3A championship, football championship in Durham. Coach Laws and the team, they'll be attempting to bring back a 4th state football championship to the Reynolds community. And we've got 5 full bus loads. And did you add a 6th today? 7. So I just talked to her earlier this morning, so you can see what how much excitement's out there in the community. But team cheerleaders, band will be on one of those buses, and of course the student fans. So, and what a fall sports season, because you just recently headed down east for a soccer championship match. So good luck to you. And I've kept telling her I had a wonderful opportunity to take that ride twice at Reynolds. Please enjoy it. It is just incredible. What an experience. The North Carolina Association of School Administrators has adopted 5 legislative priorities for the upcoming 2018 legislative session, and they actually General Assembly will be going back in on January 10th for a short session. And I want to reveal those because they've just become official today. The first priority is to enhance the state support for school district facilities. So our association, which is made up of superintendents and administrators across the state, are advocating for a $1.9 billion statewide capital bond. We're very fortunate here in Buncombe County, but for so many systems across the state, school facilities, they are in great need of improvement. Also, fine-tune school performance grades in the accountability system, and you've heard me so many times advocate for increasing that growth component in the grading formula from 20% to 50%, and that is one of the priorities from our association. Improve the district's ability to support their schools and students at the central office level. And sometimes I think we sort of get the bad rap that central office, the funding for those positions are enormous. And the reality of it, when you look at the total state funds that are provided for public schools, central office staff represents less than 1% of all of those funds. And then the fourth is to enhance the new pay plan for school principals and assistant principals. And really the most pressing issue right now is the need to hold harmless, especially for some of our veteran administrators, so that there's not potentially a future loss in pay. That has grave consequences, especially for those principals that are near the potential for retirement. So that is also one of those areas that they're advocating strongly. And over the next several board meetings, I really want to come back to the plate and highlight these, giving you more detail. So we'll talk about these four later on into the future. The fifth priority I want to talk about tonight, because it is without doubt, it is the most pressing concern that we have, especially from the budget standpoint, and that is helping school districts meet the class size reduction mandate. And I have a few slides that I want to go through. Just for the board, I think most of these are going to be review. But for the public, this is probably the first time that we've talked about these in this much detail. I think it would be good just to review. House Bill 13 is the term that we normally use for this particular legislation, having to do with kindergarten through third grade class size. And that particular law went into effect this year. It did not go into full effect. It was actually mitigated. So the requirements that we had to put this in place this particular year were much less than what we're going to be facing next year in 2018-19. So just a reminder that for this current year, a system-wide average of 20 students per grade level and a maximum of 23 per classroom. Now that's across the board, kindergarten through third grade. And it applied to what is sort of a curveball to some extent, because we did not realize until late that also applied to what we call enhancement classes. So what are enhancement classes? Physical education, art, music, dance, and world language. And I know world language, Helga, is close to your heart. But they also fell under the requirements for those class averages. So we had to make some decisions this year to meet those requirements. And the first thing we did is we adjusted class schedules across the system. We also added a halftime music teacher position to allow us to have more balance across the district. And then we also, and tonight you have those, Madam Chair, we're going to request a signature that you now are officially aware of these. We have submitted two class size waivers that the North Carolina State Board allowed us to submit, any school system, for 1 year only. And this was specific to those enhancement classes. And I will tell you, the two schools that were involved in both of these waivers, one was Glen Arden and one was Hominy Valley Elementary School, then I can tell you that as of today, we meet the requirements. However, the date that we were required to fall under the regulations, we did not meet them. So that's what prompted the waiver. But I can also tell you that we have made the adjustments that we needed to, but by law, we're going to submit that waiver. So that is for 1 year. So that is what we have done for this particular year to meet the mandate. Now, here's what's ahead of us. And let's see. Robert, there we go. Thank you. Now, this is House Bill 13 with its full effect. And it is scheduled to impact us beginning August of next year. And as you can see, it's much more restrictive. The mandate requires in kindergarten that across the system, an average of 18, that's across Buncombe County schools, all kindergarten classrooms, and any individual kindergarten class cannot exceed a max of 21. And if you'll follow through on those numbers, you can see it's 16 is the average in first grade, and then the max of 19, and then for second and third, both 17 and 20. So that goes into effect next year. Now, what's the impact? Because I think that's our greatest concern. What does this translate into? What it means is that for 2018-19, for Buncombe County schools to meet that mandate, we're looking at 35 additional core teachers. Now, that's classroom teachers. I'm not talking about physical education, art, music, world language. I'm talking about core kindergarten, first, second, and third grade teachers. 35 new teachers. Now, what does that represent from a dollar standpoint? $2,532,075. So we are going to be tasked to identify that amount of money in order to meet the requirements of House Bill 13. And we estimated that, again, to be totally transparent, you can see the figure is estimated at $72,345 per teacher. Now you think, well, I don't know too many kindergarten, first and second and third grade teachers making that amount of money. Ms. Lopez, we might get some extra teachers here. Anybody interested in that salary? Reality of it is that's the total cost of the school system, because it's not just salary, it's the benefit package, it's the employer's responsibility for that. So when you total it up, looking at that average, that's the cost that we estimated. We also are aware that we're going to need additional enrichment teachers. We're just not sure at this point in time what that number is going to look like, but we're working toward it. We also need to remember that in kindergarten and first grade, we have our teacher assistants in place. And we have been so fortunate over the past several years to have one-to-one ratios of teacher assistants in kindergarten and in first grade, and then in second and third, we were in a formula. And I think we're now 1-to-4, is that correct? Okay. And so how many teacher assistants? Again, we're working to identify that particular number. And there's also a capital cost. And I think we're fortunate in Buncombe County in that the intermediate schools have allowed us to have some additional space, K-3, that other systems may not have. So in our work session to the board, Mr. Fearley and Mr. Huff presented to you what our strategy would be in terms of providing that additional classroom space. And when you total up the cost of that, and again, that's capital, and again, as we know in the school budget business, you have to separate capital monies from operating monies, that figure is $675,600. That's the estimate for that. So, in fact, later on, Madam Chair, you're going to have as a part of the agenda, Mr. Fairley is going to make a presentation because, again, from a timing standpoint, and it is not only the challenge for us to identify the dollar source, It is a timing issue. I'm going to show you a slide in just a second that will illustrate that. If for systems across the state, if you think about their need to bring modulars in, to purchase new modulars and to bring them in, we're talking already December. They have to have them in place by August. That's going to be a tremendous challenge across the state. So again, I think we're fortunate in that our plan allows us to utilize what we have internally. Okay, next slide. Class size report. Now, I'm also going to be required to sign an affidavit, and that has to be sent back to DPI by December 15th. And my affidavit basically states that the numbers that have been pulled and sent to DPI, which will in turn be sent to General Assembly, are accurate numbers. So what information is being required? The class size for all grades in Buncombe County schools, any exceptions that we might have, and again, I reference the waivers that we have sent in, the number of program enhancement teachers in K-3, and also the average class size. So all of that has been submitted. It's been pulled from our records in what we call Power School, which is the great library that holds all this data for each and every school system in the state. So that has been pulled, and so now it's in the hands of DPI, and it will go to the General Assembly. And then again, that affidavit is also required. My next slide is in reference to the waivers. And it's just information again that stresses that this is for 1 year only. So this waiver will not count any of these waivers for 18-19. Next slide is regarding the timeline, and you can see the specific dates that our data was pulled through Power School. And interestingly enough, there will be a second data pull in February. And some of the concern we have is the decisions that will be made by the General Assembly could be halted from the January session in order to gain information through February's pull. So from a standpoint of when will we find out if becomes the amount of money that the General Assembly then provides us to help offset the number of new teachers that are going to be required to be hired. That remains to be seen. Again, as you can see, the dates when the affidavit is due, and then the second time on the data pull. As I said earlier, though, this is a timing issue. And I think this slide may be the most important one of all. In January 10th, the General Assembly goes back for a short session. We are not aware that this particular topic will be brought up. It's a possibility. We would certainly strongly encourage, because, again, from the budget planning, as early as we can find out if and or the amount of funding that would come to us to assist this mandate, we would love to hear that in January. And the reason is that we want to hear about it in January is that May 15th, we are required to submit to the county commissioners our local budget request. So if at that point in time, if we are still facing this full $2.5 million, then we've got to make a decision. Is that then we're going to turn to the commissioners and request that funding coming from local funds. From a planning standpoint, I think we have to assume that that there will not be any dollars, and so we're going to have to come up with budget strategies. So where will that funding come from? That's a timing issue. It is May 16th when the General Assembly is scheduled to go back into session, and that's a full session. And again, that is after when we are required by law to submit the local funds, operating fund requests to the commissioners. So this is a tremendous challenge, and we have talked about it in bits and pieces. We actually spoke about it last year, anticipating that we would have the full effect of House Bill 13 this year. We got somewhat of a reprieve. We've adjusted for that, and now we are facing again the full effect of the reduction in class size. And I'll also say that our curriculum staff, I think all of us as educators certainly support the concept of lowering class sizes. No question about that, especially in our kindergarten through third grade level, that foundation level, that makes a lot of sense. But in order to reduce those class sizes, it is going to require each and every school system, there's 115 of them, to look at additional teachers to reduce that size, and also it's going to force them to look at classroom space. So at this point in time, we've done both of those. Just want to report this out to the board, make the public aware of it, and Madam Chair, we move on, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Baldwin. At this time,
Chair, could I add just
Sure,
a thought?
certainly.
Dr. Baldwin, appreciate you dancing around the issue, but I think the people in the room and the public needs to hear what we have here is an unfunded mandate. We've been told this will happen, and the funding for it has not occurred. You got a lot of charts and a lot of information there, but in the essence of it is it's an unfunded mandate. And when you have an unfunded mandate with 86% of your capital resources going to personnel, that's a problem. It impacts people. And that's the dilemma that this board faces and you and your staff face, is trying to figure out how to least impact the people that work in this system in a way that doesn't then negatively impact the kids in our schools. But it's clear this is an unfunded mandate, and at this point we're at $2.5 million, and those are recurring funds. That's not one time. If we found a way to come up with $2.5 million in 1 year, we got to come up with it again the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So just to understand, this is a real problem. I've been on this board 11 years now, and this is by far the most worried I've been about something that we've got to address in the coming months for the betterment of the school system. So I just wanted to add that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Our next item on the agenda is good news.
Good evening, Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair, members of the board. I would like to bring to the podium Ms. Doris Seller. She's the principal of Reynolds High School, and Ms. Ariel Jacobson. She's one of the seniors at Reynolds. And we're here tonight to recognize Ms. Ariel because she recently had a book published. So they're both here to tell us a little more about it.
So good evening, Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair Franklin, members of the board, and our guest. So before I introduce Ariel, thank you for your support, Dr. Baldwin, for the Rockets this weekend. I was able to meet with them today and give them the game plan, and I told them they need to score early, score a lot, and don't let the other team score. It seemed pretty simple, but I think Coach Laws has a little bit more information to give them before that, so we're excited. I hope they take that advice. So at Reynolds High School, we are always talking about the 3 A's of education, and it is our academics, it's our athletics, and it's our arts. And so today, in one full day, we're able to just brag about all of those things within our school. So tonight, it is just an honor for me to introduce to you one of our Reynolds High School seniors, school improvement team member, and an active officer in our Girl Up Club. I cannot give enough accolades to Ariel Jacobson. I remember vividly the first day I met her, that I guess she caught my attention in the building. She walked up to me and she said, I was on supervision, and she said, I need to talk to you about this book I have written. And she told me about the purpose and what she wanted to do with the book and the message that she wanted to share, especially to our middle school students. And she has certainly done that, and Ariel's going to tell you about how she has brought that message. I remember when she walked away, I said to myself, wow, that is a remarkable young woman. And as she talks to you tonight, each of you have a book in front of you that you'll be able to see that she is giving each of you. And she hopes that you will share that with someone who needs those words of encouragement. But to tell you a little story about how Ariel is, because I can tell you all about what kind of student she is, but it's more important for me to tell you about who Ariel is as a person. At the beginning of this school year, we had to look seriously at our school schedule, and it was one of those times we had to make a principal decision that maybe wasn't the most popular among students. And I mean, imagine that, a principal decision that's not the most popular in the building. And so it wasn't going very well, and I decided to call some students into my office and talk to them show them some data and talk to them about why that decision needed to be made. And after that meeting, one of the students said, we understand that now, and thank you for sharing that with us, and we've got this. Our parents, we've got this. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So we talked about how could we disseminate that information throughout the school and some ideas. Well, the next morning, just a few hours later, up walked Ariel, and she said, I have got this plan. She had, in the evening, created a very thorough plan and a thoughtful plan about how she and her peers were going to disseminate this information throughout the building. And she looked at me and she said, we have this, Miss Sellers. You don't need to worry about this anymore. And basically from that point forward, I didn't have another email. I didn't have another phone call. I'm sure they're still complaining, but she took that and they handled it. And I thought to myself, every principal needs an Ariel. Every single one. She is special. She's going to go far. And her goals that she's going to tell you about involves possibly even being a principal or opening her own school. And as an educator, there is probably nothing that can give you chills any more than when a student wants to follow in the footsteps that you already have followed. So it is an absolute honor for me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you senior at A.C. Reynolds High School and author of the book, A is for Awkward, Ariel Jacobson. And when she walks away from you tonight, each of you are going to say, wow, that is a remarkable young woman. So Ariel's going to tell you a bit about her book.
So hello, my name is Ariel Jacobson, and I'm the author of A is for Awkward, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what inspired me to write this book. So when I transitioned from elementary school to middle school, I had a really difficult time adjusting. My mind was changing, my friends were changing, my body was changing, and these factors led me to develop depression. During this dark time, I searched for relatable resources to help validate that I was not alone in how I felt, but I didn't find anything that helped me. Ooh, I forgot what I was going to say, sorry. I forgot what was going to help me. Sorry, I'm so nervous. Okay. So after I left middle school, I knew I didn't want other students to have the negative experience that I did, and that's why I decided to create this book. I wrote the book A is for Awkward, A Guide to Surviving Middle School, a book written and illustrated by teens for teens, filled with encouragement and real-world advice from recent middle schoolers. After publishing this book, I decided to venture onto a journey and write a curriculum centered around the book, along my high school literature coach, Ms. Laura Meyer. After writing this curriculum, I decided to take it to the classroom and teach it to some of our county schools, such as classes at A.C. Reynolds Middle School, Cane Creek Middle School, other schools like Franklin School of Innovation, French Broad River Academy, and organizations like the YMCA After School Program and the Girl Scouts of USA. Now, if you didn't just hear your school mentioned and you're interested in having me present, please get in contact with me. I would be more than happy to present to some of your students. So after I had this experience, I grew really passionate about this project, and I'm now planning to open my own business where I will develop a program to help mentor other teens to be mentors to their younger peers in middle school, helping to spread the book's message of youth empowerment and resiliency throughout the country. Now, through this process, I have received undying support from my principal, Miss Sellers, and I just want to take a minute to thank her for everything she has done for me and for believing me always. I told her about this project when it was unpublished and when I didn't really know what I was doing, and she's been here and supportive throughout all of it. So let's just give her a round of applause really quick. So the note I want to end on, after every class I present to, I always ask for feedback from the kids because I know I can always improve upon things. And one student in particular really stands out to me. So after I presented, she came up to me and she said, because of the words I'd read in this book, I have felt like I'm worth something for the first time in a long time. My goal is to get this book in the hands of every middle school student in this country. I think it can help them to receive a better educational experience as a result. Thank you so much for your time and for your recognition. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Here's your book. Can I borrow this? Good. Where'd you find her? Yeah, she would.
No blinking, everyone keep on smiling. Good news for the evening.
Oh, I'm too busy watching her autograph these things. I apologize. Sorry. You know, Doris Sellers can go from North Buncombe High School to Reynolds, and you know that she got all of her training at North Buncombe, and she's over here doing it at Reynolds, and it drives me nuts. Okay, that being said.
Your loss is our gain, Ms. Franklin.
Well, you know, I believe in sharing.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
So the curriculum featured tonight is Sherry Boone and Jennifer Reed.
Good evening, Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to introduce our curriculum feature this evening, the North Carolina Global Educator Digital Badge Program. Tonight's presentation will give an overview of the digital badge process, honor the North Carolina Global Educator Digital Badge recipients from Buncombe County Schools, and recognize a number of our educators who are candidates for the badge. The pathway to the digital badge process was paved by Helga Fasciano, Special Assistant for Global Education for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We are pleased to have Helga with us this evening. At this time, Dr. Sherry Boone, our Buncombe County Schools Global Specialist, will come to the podium to teach us more about the process and to honor our important guests.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. And I also have to thank Dr. Baldwin and the board members and Ms. Swanger, who's not here with us this evening, because this celebration of our North Carolina Global Educator Digital Badge recipients is an inaugural event for Buncombe County Schools. It's been a work in progress for the past couple of years for us, and it's been in implementation across North Carolina, I believe, since 2013-14. In recognition of this state recognition and our recipients, we wanted to begin the presentation with Ms. Helga Fasciano. As Dr. Baldwin mentioned and Ms. Reed mentioned, they've laid the platform already for her to speak to us tonight, to talk to us about the process, the meaning, and the implementation, and how it's impacted us in Buncombe County Schools. So I want to give the floor over to Ms. Fasciano.
Members of the board, Madam Chair, Superintendent Baldwin, it is truly an honor to be here with you this evening. And this is really good news to share because this is one of those programs that is not a mandate. It is definitely a groundswell. And one of those springs from which this whole initiative has sprung is right here in Buncombe County, because you have a superintendent that had a vision for this, you have staff that have embraced this, and the winners in all of this are the students that they're impacting. And that's what our number one goal is here. So just a quick background as to how all of this began. This really does talk about the fact that this is from planning to doing. Our State Board of Education did embark on looking at, are we meeting our vision statement? This is the latest statement for their vision. Since 2004, the State Board has had something in their vision statement around globally competitive students, as well as moving now into this globally engaged and productive citizen. And they felt that they weren't meeting that. They felt that their students were shining, they were doing well academically, but were they ready for career and post-secondary education in the world that we're in today? So with that, a task force was pulled together. Wayne McDevitt, who is your representative on the State Board, was the chair of that task force on global education, and they did a series of listen and learn meetings over an 18-month period. So they heard from national experts, they heard from other agencies across, they heard from international experts, but probably what the most important audience and folks that they heard from were from the school districts themselves. So Dr. Baldwin came with a team and talked to them about all the fantastic things that were already happening around global education within this district. And one of the things that was said there that I shared with Dr. Baldwin and with the group tonight that I still talk about is that even with all the fantastic things and the groundwork that was being laid, all the partnerships, the collaboration that Buncombe County is known for, that the bottom line was, even with all of that, only 5% of the students were being affected, and that just was not good enough. So that began that discussion of how do you develop something, an infrastructure at the state level to help to support something that our districts wanted. And so that was one of 15 districts that came and testified. All pockets of excellence, but without something to help support it would eventually go away. So with this, you can see that the State Board did adopt 5 commitments that came with their report that was adopted by the full State Board. And it was around these 5 commitments, you can see in the italics some of the action items that have come to fruition from that time. The first one under there, they realized we're not going to get our students ready until we help our educators to get there. And so that's what that number 1, robust teacher support and tools. So the Global Educator Digital Badge was really the first action item that came about. And what was really important, as I'll share to you, is that this was not ever to be an add-on. This was something we were doing anyway and would be a way for teachers to focus rather than have something to do in addition to what they're already doing every day. Around the leading edge language instruction, you folks are also a leader with dual language immersion and the programming there. The global languages endorsement really was a byproduct. That is a seal of biliteracy you may have heard about across the nation. That is something that can go on to the transcripts of your high school diplomas. And then moving on, the Global Ready Schools and Districts, of which Buncombe County really helped to shape what that looked like on those implementation rubrics. One of the pieces, one of the caveats to become a Global Ready School or district is how many of your educators are actually involved in the Global Educator Digital Badge process. What is the plan for that? And again, nothing is mandated. Everything that's been happening so far has been literally a groundswell. And from the time that that report was accepted in January of 2013, the first policy came about in October of 2014, which was the Global Educator Digital Badge, and we had our first candidates enrolling the spring of 2015. So the process is really fairly new, and for Buncombe County to have this many educators, much less already 6 that have earned, because it can take up to 2 years. The whole process is allowed to take to 2 years to complete. The State Board does take a big interest in this, so I just wanted to show you within their own strategic plan, under Measure 2.3.1, they are looking at the number of global education ready schools, so those schools and or districts that are earning that designation. And under Measure 2.3.2, we literally are only looking at our Global Educator Digital Badge completers, because that's the only one that we have that's being offered at the state level at this point. So when we're talking about a global educator, I'd like for you just to take a moment and look at what this italicized saying is giving to you. Because the most important part is not global educator. The most important part is that you have an educator that is meeting the content standards. That's why you are here. You are wanting to ensure that your students acquire the academic content they need to be successful. But along with that is an opportunity to begin to embed what we talk about, connecting your students to the rest of the world, allowing them to understand how they fit in, how the rest fits in with them, how they can impact, and how what's happening in the world impacts them. So that's what we're talking about around this global awareness. And then we do, of course, have the badge that outlines how to do this. The iconic rainbow from the 21st Century Learning Skills is embedded throughout the professional teaching standards, as well as all of the educator standards all the way up to Superintendent Baldwin's standards that you hold him to. From that, these are 3 basic frameworks that are really throughout all of those standards. That's what made it extremely easy for us to tie this process in with the current educator evaluation system that all of your teachers are doing now. So it just gives them an opportunity when they do their professional development plan to focus in on those global awareness pieces of the evaluation rubric for that period of time, and then build on that. The principals, working with their instructional staff, can determine if other factors should be part of that as well, but this just gives them an opportunity to dig into that. So there's steps to earn this badge. First of all, looking at where they are in those global awareness elements that are identified already in the educator evaluation system. They create their professional development plan. This badge, as you heard, is also available to administrative staff. And so the actual policy was revised in October of 2015 in order to accommodate those additional educator areas. In order to make sure that everybody knows who's involved in making sure that this could happen for that educator, a memorandum of agreement has been put together. All the pertinent parties would sign that. That comes to us at DPI. We have a management forum to help them to work through the process. And then they earn a minimum of 100 hours of global education professional development. That was probably one of the first biggest, But if you listen to your own educators, they will tell you it was easier than they thought it could be. And as a matter of fact, it was one of those things that made them hungry for more as they went through that process. The final piece in earning a digital badge or a micro-credential is that there has to be some kind of an artifact that indicates the person has taken the experience, they've done their learning, and now they've mastered it to a point where it shows impact. And in the case of our teachers, it is impacting their students. So how are they teaching? How are they addressing their content that they're responsible for teaching, but allowing for those opportunities for their students to begin to analyze and frame and see where they fit in the world? So that is, for our teachers, an instructional unit. And from some of the testimony we heard tonight from some of these teachers is that this was a huge professional development opportunity for them. It made them a better curriculum writer. They understood their standards better, but most importantly, they saw light, engagement, and enthusiasm from their students throughout this process. The rest of those pieces are just some of the management pieces around it. This online management platform that we have allows them to submit certain paperwork, very easy for them to do that. Their capstone project then is that kind of linchpin. It is a very rigorous, and they will tell you that too. Every period has to be accounted for because their projects are published in the home-based resource bank and becomes actually a resource for all of our educators across the state of North Carolina. And you have 6 that are being published, and 1 has been identified as an exemplar for the state of North Carolina. So many kudos and congratulations to how Buncombe County has supported their teachers in this process, and you now have administrators that are part of the process as well. It's very exciting because, again, it's not a mandate. I probably get the best phone calls in the whole department, because these are folks that are interested, they want to know how to do it. The only frustration part is, oh, I've got to do something with my capstone project. They want me to fix something. That's the easy part. Just hang in there, it'll get done. Okay? So some guidance that has occurred, and because, again, Buncombe County's been at the forefront within the implementation guide that was just published this fall. Again, one of your teachers from their capstone project has now become a teacher for others looking for this, so some of their work is actually part of the guidance within this document, and so we're very proud of that as well. But you can see that there are many pieces of this, so when we think about other things that your educators are responsible for in terms of their own learning, the digital learning is a big piece. And so resources on copyright and fair use for capstone projects, they will tell you that is one of the biggest pieces. What you do in the classroom is one thing, Fair Use Act. However, once you elevate it to where it's kind of published, which is what we're doing within the home-based environment, that's a whole nother way of looking at how you use instructional materials and how you have to cite, et cetera. So all of those resources are there to help them. Just to give you an idea, Buncombe County definitely is at the forefront, but across the state, again, this process has only been around a couple of years now. We are over the 600 mark. We're approaching 700 now that have formally enrolled, and I know of just as many who have not formally enrolled. They just haven't gotten their paperwork in yet. As of October, we had 18 completers. That did not include 3 of the ones being recognized tonight. But this is growing, and as of this week, we actually had our first 2 administrators from another district that actually earned their Global Educator Digital Badge, so a principal and assistant principal. And this is one of those things, enrollment is really available year-round. It is up to the administrator, the supervising administrator working with the educator to determine when do I do my professional development plan or my goals and strategies as my particular role would have me do, and then that could be sent in at any time. And from the time we receive it, that MOA is when their 2-year period starts. And so we have some additional resources. So that is just a quick background of the process. These teachers will tell you that this process is very serious. They see it as a true professional development. But again, I encourage you to listen to their stories. I know you started to hear some of their stories, but it is all about the students that they teach, and that's where they feel the biggest impact has been for them, and they feel it has also made them a better educator for that. So it is truly an honor to be here, to be with you as you honor your 6 completers tonight.
Taking us through the journey of the North Carolina Global Educator Digital Badge process. There's one thing that we want to do that Ms. Fasciano doesn't know that Dr. Baldwin and I are going to do, and that is to recognize her for the leadership she has provided across the state of North Carolina, but most importantly, and I'm biased, to Buncombe County Schools teachers who are pursuing this process. So right now, we want to not only welcome Helga to Buncombe County Schools once again, but to recognize her for this effort. And I wanted to give Dr. Baldwin another opportunity to say anything that he may want to say about Helga before we present her with the plaque.
Well, we spilled the beans. You're getting a plaque. No, just once again, Helga, we just can't thank you enough. You know, I've been in these teachers' classrooms. I've been in our Spanish immersion classroom that we started. In fact, Tina's here at Glen Arden, our dual language. And, you know, I walk out of these classrooms and with 8 grandkids, I think what a gift that we're able to give those children. And if we can just figure out, Helga, how to get 24,000 gifts to these kids, because I have no doubt that the world, when they step across our stage at graduation, the world that they're going to enter into is truly global. And how can we give those gifts? So thank you for what you've done from a statewide standpoint, because you've just been a significant leader. So thank you.
And I couldn't have said it better, but I wanted to add that, as you can see, Ms. Fasciano was truly a state leader, and not only in policy development and procedures and the implementation of this work, but the fidelity and the review process that will continue to take place across the state of North Carolina. And I wrote down some heartfelt words that I hope that I'm going to read this just so I don't misquote it, but it's things that Dr. Baldwin and others have said along the way. But most importantly, the leadership that Ms. Fasciano has provided to us, particularly in Buncombe County School, It's because what she does is helps us strive to be better educators. As an educator myself of 31 years, the teachers that I had a chance to work with this year and the past couple of years on the badge process has inspired me, has humbled me, and energized me. So I'm now one of the candidates to seek this badge. That's right. But most importantly, our work is to impact the lives of students. So when they leave Buncombe County Schools, they are leaving better prepared to live and to work in this diverse world in which we live, and it's in our back door. So I applaud these teachers. It's a privilege to work with them, and it's a privilege to work with Ms. Fasciano. And boy, we've had the questions, and she's always been there to answer, and so for that, I'm very grateful. So at this time, I want to present Ms. Fasciano with a plaque on behalf of Buncombe County Schools, Dr. Baldwin, and the members of the board.
Oh, wow.
On the floor.
I just believe that that plaque should be foremost in your office, since, yeah, don't hide it in the back somewhere.
The first thing I will do next week, Madam Chair, is to walk into our own superintendent's office and indicate how important this work is.
Tell him there are good things going on in the mountains.
You should go with me.
It's a long way to Raleigh.
So I have a very scripted, choreographed text here, and so I believe that we are going to not only recognize our 6 recipients, but then we're also going to have another photo op. So Stacia, you make sure that you choreograph me well.
Ms. Fasciano, if you could come stand in the middle here, and Dr. B, if you could come back up here.
Okay.
You all are going to receive your plaques and then come stand next to Ms. Fasciano in front and center. Maybe next to her. There'll be lots of pictures. Oh, lots
Yeah.
of
Well, as you heard Dr. Baldwin mention in his opening comments, we have 34 educators currently seeking the North Carolina Global Educator Digital Badge. Of those 34, 6 have earned this designation, and those are the 6 that we want to recognize tonight with a plaque from Buncombe County Schools. We'll begin with Chanina Tovar, ESL teacher, West Buncombe Elementary School. Capstone project titled is Immigration I Am.
It is Ms. Tovar's particular capstone that is one of the exact ones that
In addition to those comments, I must say that Ms. Tovar and upcoming Ms. Gregory, Carrie Gregory from West Buncombe, are now on the state review team for the capstone projects and are also Buncombe County Schools Global Ambassadors as well. Our second recipient is Carrie Gregory, ESL teacher, West Buncombe Elementary School. Capstone project title is Child Poverty. Third recipient of the badge is Ms. Elena Parker, ELA teacher, Kuntz Intermediate. Capstone project title, Making the World a Better Place, Compassion and Understanding Near and Far. recipient is Catherine Zamara, ELA teacher, North Buncombe Middle School, capstone project titled Americans Eat More Insects. Fifth recipient, Laura Mitchell, art teacher at A.C. Reynolds Middle and North Buncombe Middle School, capstone project titled Take a Walk in My Shoes, Empathy and Understanding of the Paths We Journey. Final recipient, Gabriella Birmingham, dual language Spanish immersion teacher at Oakley Elementary, capstone project titled Access to Education. Yeah, full picture?
Let's do it.
All right.
All the recipients, come on down.
I just, I want everybody to know that Brian Chandler and Danny Fusco are principals that have these teachers, and they're over here about to burst. They're filming and doing all this kind of stuff in support of their teachers and this grand event.
Oh, me too. Now, we were going to have board members represent.
All board members, come on down. All board members?
You come on.
Everybody wants a lawyer picture.
Everybody.
Really? Yes.
Every board member?
Oh, everybody. What did you say? We don't have no pictures of you guys.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's $100 a click.
And before we conclude for the evening, we also have to recognize, equally important are the 28 candidates in line for the Global Educator Digital Badge. I know many of them had to leave this evening, but I would like for the candidates to please stand in unison so we can recognize you for your work. Each of these educators received a certificate in the pre-board meeting, but I also wanted to say that the beauty about this group of 34 is that they do represent K-12, from teacher to media specialist to school social worker to school administrator to central office instructional support. And so I applaud the work that they're doing, not just because they're in the classroom, but just because we're educators in Buncombe County Schools. So thank you all for your hard work, and thank you for the pleasure of working with you. Concludes our part of the presentation.
Madam Chair, if I could just add a personal note. As you know, my daughter Katie graduated from Reynolds High School last year, and she's now a freshman at UNC Chapel Hill, majoring in global studies. And I think part of well, entirely what has sparked her excitement and enthusiasm about her studies is what she was exposed to here in Buncombe County Schools, and it's life-changing for our students, and so I'm really grateful as a parent.
Thank you. At this time, we have public comment. Yeah, you guys probably have to be at school tomorrow, so. Yeah, probably. Along with all Buncombe County, yeah. Bye-bye. Chandler. All right, Mr. Rickert, do we have public comment?
Yes, ma'am. We have one public comment this evening. We have Mr. Colin Van Etten from Weaverville.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Colin Van Etten. Before I start, I will let you know that in the opposite of last month's meeting, I will not be playing an overdose call from EMS, as I feel like I should probably only have to play that once for you to get your attention and to keep it. However, later I will be speaking on a presentation on those policies as well. I serve on the advisory council at the high school level at North Buncombe High School and vice president of the PTSO there, the superintendent's advisory council at the district level, and Asheville Buncombe Crime Stoppers as well. I work with Buncombe County IT radio, so I hear all those 911 calls for service that comes in from the fire departments and the sheriff's departments. I have to move the cases of Narcan in the backs of the law enforcement vehicles so I can get the radios of program. So I'm privy to some information and crime statistics that the local news, frankly, doesn't report because they're not made aware of it. And it's a constant reminder that the serious chemical substance abuse problems exist in our community. Just exactly what the PCS policy says. Here's a parent letter that I received on October 23rd. Hi, Colin. Thank you for bringing this up for our children and community. Our story is this. We discovered that our son was smoking pot several times per week during the spring of 9th grade at blank high school here in Buncombe County. After we confiscated his phone and looked at the activities, we found that he had started smoking pot in the 8th grade at middle school. He was smoking with friends and acquaintances from all corners of the school, athletes, academic kids, band kids, and kids active in many other excellent extracurricular activities. In short, any of our kids. The marijuana was prevalent, openly dealt, and easily accessed. Students were buying and selling drugs and drug paraphernalia at school. They were getting high in the woods on school grounds during the short period of free time between the end of the school day and the beginning of after-school sports or other activities. Other substances were also being consumed, including one episode of pills purchased and used in school. My take is this: I don't consider myself either naive nor paranoid. However, I was blindsided by the early age this aggressive experimentation was taking place. I do believe that this is a new generation of teenagers that thinks differently than any before. They access sophisticated knowledge on how to use all kinds of drugs and get away with it. And combined with a typical teen fearless attitude, if not bravado, they fail to recognize the risks. The pot is far more potent, the pills are easily acquired and highly addictive. They are truly getting much deeper and much more quickly than prior generations. I hope this helps or creates some thought. So like I said, later in the presentation, I'll give you some of those subjects, those board policies that relate to this, specifically with drugs in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's what he's wanting. Yeah, that's fine. He just took 3, so give him 5 more. If that's fine. That's fine with me. Yeah.
After everybody else is done, but there are no others, I don't think.
so I should say. Do we have other public comment? Okay. Mr. Van Etten, is it your intent to continue your public comment minutes tonight?
Yes, I believe you said 5 minutes.
Yes, you have had 2 minutes. We will add the other 3 to give you 5.
It was my understanding there was 3 minutes for public comment, and I had 5 minutes for a presentation.
No, sir.
Well, it's up to.
No, sir. I added 2 minutes to your presentation time. You had 3, we were giving you 5 minutes. You have now had 2. We will continue with 3. If my math is good.
Well, he's got 2 left, but I don't, leave him at 3.
You'll reset the counter, right?
Franklin, are we resetting the counter at 3 minutes?
3. That is correct. Thank you. Your time begins, Mr. Van Etten, when you take your position at the podium.
Pardon me, I'm going to have to hurry through this. Like I said before, I was under the impression there was 3 minutes for public comment and then 5 minutes for presentation, as in the email that I received from you earlier this week. I can try to cover this as quickly as possible. What we're looking at are your policies, 4325, 4342, and 5120. I'll read those pertinent lines of those policies. 4325, drugs and alcohol. Buncombe County Schools recognizes that a serious chemical and substance abuse problem exists both nationally and in our community at large. Policy 4342, student searches. Searches will be conducted to protect students from dangerous conditions such as possession and sale of drugs on the premises or possession of dangerous weapons or substances by other students. Same policy, 4342, Section 4, using canines. Paragraph 1, the school principal shall coordinate the use of search dogs with local law enforcement. Not may, not can if they want to, not if they have a reason to, shall. Policy 5120, relationship with law enforcement. The district administration and principals are expected to communicate the needs of the schools and work with law enforcement officials in developing joint programs and establishing protocols for handling situations in which the assistance of law enforcement is helpful or necessary. I've met with the sheriff. I've spoken with Ms. Natalie Bailey as well. And what I've found in those meetings and meeting with other parents, meeting with MAHEC, meeting with Health and Human Services regarding the opioid epidemic and numerous sources within the community, the Sheriff's Department has plenty of resources to conduct those searches. There are 5 to 6 dogs available at any time. We had originally thought that that was an issue, and we had a private group of investors that wanted to donate a dog to the schools so that dog could be used in the schools. Later, we found out they're just not being asked for. So in that packet that I gave you, you'll find the 2016-2017 report for searches within the schools. That came from Buncombe County Sheriff's Department. You have 44 schools in this county. In 2016, there were 2 searches total. 2017, that number is 0. No searches. You have a policy in place that says you can do it. You have a policy that says you recognize it's a serious problem, and yet you're not using that free resource given to you by the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for Mr. Van Etten? Do you want to say something?
I have a question.
Yes.
I believe at the last meeting you had mentioned when you played the tape that that could have been prevented by having the dogs there walk through, but I'm not an expert, but my understanding is that what the drug of choice, I guess, for lack of a better word, would not be something that the canines could pick up on. Do you have suggestions for how to handle that? Because I think what we're looking at is substances that are out there that, let's just be honest, I mean, canines can't find. So to pin all of our hopes and dreams on the use of canines to solve this drug problem isn't going to solve it. So we got to figure out a better way. And I have a teen daughter. You know, she's an 11th grader at T.C. Robertson. I can assure you that she could probably tell you who sells the drugs. I am fortunate enough that I can say with 100% certainty that she does not partake. But I also know that if she wanted to, she could do it not only at school, she could do it at the movie theater, shopping, Biltmore Park, whatever. And unfortunately, the dogs won't really make much difference. But I can tell that you're very passionate about this, and I would be very interested, you know, parent to parent, maybe in the future, speaking to you about other opportunities and within the community to become involved, because this is a community issue, and it's not just the schools. And I understand your frustration, but I think maybe we should try to work on channeling that passion to something other than use of canines.
I will say that I think you misquoted me. Last time I did not say that having the dogs in the school would have prevented this specific instance. In the big scheme of things, the use of canines are a small portion of what is available to you. You already have a policy in place that addresses that. It is very black and white. It is very simple, and it's just not used. Using them, not only will you find things, but you'll also create a deterrent for those kids that want to come to the school and peddle poison to your daughter. So it's one tool in many. We can educate the kids to say, hey, you probably shouldn't do drugs, and that works for some. We can show them the effects of drugs and what has happened. We can have excellent resource officers in the schools to show them the history of what has happened, who's been affected by this, and what can happen to you. This is one small tool. All I'm asking you to do is you have a policy in place, not asking you to make something new up. Just use that resource that is free for you to use. The more that you put that out there, and the more that those kids see that, it creates more of a deterrent. You won't find it all. You won't find some of it. You'll find a little bit, and you'll see, those kids will see those dogs in the school.
Okay, well, I apologize that I misunderstood what you had said last time, so thank you very much, and you know, hopefully we can
Thank you.
work as a community.
Dr. Baldwin?
No, I want to be respectful of Mr. Van Etten's presentation as well, but I would like some clarification. Mr. Van Etten, after the previous board meeting, I talked with Lieutenant Ruby just regarding the drug dog specifically. As a high school principal, I'm well aware of their use and have used them in the past at the high school I was at. But my understanding is, Lieutenant Ruby, we've had thus far this school year, I don't know on the numbers for last year, but this year we've had 4 of our 6 traditional high schools have had drug dogs go through. And let me make sure I've got clarification on this, if I remember correctly as an administrator. Those drug dogs are not allowed to approach students nor staff. In essence, they cannot sniff a person. But they are used for lockers, for hallways, for empty classrooms, and where I found them to be valuable was in the parking lots. But I just for the purposes of clarification, that's my understanding is that I'm not sure which particular schools.
Each of those, the school administrators have requested those K-9s to come, and we've made arrangements for them to come, yes. Also, 2 middle schools, I understand, too, they've been there, too, as well.
I'm sorry?
2 middle schools as well.
The two middle schools.
4 high schools and 2 middle schools.
All right, so my information, I know we're trying to say there have been some this year. My information was given to me on October 10th, after I requested that. When I got that information, I requested to make that presentation in November. The email that is in your packet, you will see from Sergeant Warren, K-9 report from 2016. That 16 report will show you a number of 8. That 8 is actually 2 searches using 4 officers. That's how they schedule and show where they use resources. This year, we do not have any K-9 searches at a school yet. That was October 10th. All right, so I understand that maybe bringing that to light and shedding some light on that and getting it out there may have caused some additional searches to go on or some first searches to go on. But let's just make those effective.
Yeah, just wanted clarification on that statement. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Etten. We're all concerned about the safety of our schools, and our focus is such. We're moving to the action agenda. The first item on the agenda is Deborah Frisbee, Budget Amendment 2. I understand that where'd she go? There she is. I understand that some board members might have questions for you, Ms. Frisbee. Do you? No?
Mine are on a couple of other items. It was not, it didn't have
sorry.
anything to do with the budget.
Okay, then, any other board member have a question? Ms. Sellers, I'm real sorry, but you can't leave. I don't care what time you're boarding that daggum bus. You can't go. Yeah, lots of ruck, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Nothing like being called out in front of everybody.
Oh, well. Budget amendment number 2, Ms. Frisbee. Hearing no questions from the board, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve budget amendment number 2.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, AC Reynolds High School ADA Food Lab renovations, authorization to award the contract. That's Mr. Fearley. Any questions from the board? Mr. Bryant.
I do have one and maybe two. Mr. Fearley, there he is. And maybe for the board attorney as well. Insufficient bids initially received means we're supposed to have 3, correct?
That's correct.
How many was insufficient? Did we have 2 or did we have 1?
We had 1 show up.
And at that point, it goes back out.
Correct.
It's resubmitted, but or not resubmitted, but it's put out to bid again. And
Rebid.
at that point, you have to have at least one
Correct.
qualified bidder. Was the first bidder also the qualified bidder?
Was the first bidder that showed up the first time?
Right.
Was the same bidder that showed up the second time, submitted a bid, and it was a sufficient bid.
And is there anything other than the things I feel like I'm beating a dead horse that we've talked about the last few meetings in terms of getting enough qualified bidders? Was there anything about this project or anything going on that was a different problem to be able to have 3 bidders to start with, or is it the same environment in terms of
bidders to come? Right. The second time, we thought we had 2 other bidders interested, and they simply didn't show up. It's the nature of the market.
Nothing new, it's the same things going on.
It's the same old, same old.
Okay. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? I'm just curious, is this the same company that's done the work in our other schools, or is it a new company?
This is a company that is currently doing T.C. Robertson and Owen. There was another company, was one of the bidders we had hoped to get, that did North Buncombe and, did North Buncombe, and then There was another bidder that said he would bid the second time that did Anka, but they are busy.
That's a really nice facility that we have.
But the T.C. Robertson and Owen project is going well. This is a real good contractor, and when you're the only bidder, you have an opportunity to maybe raise your price, and I don't believe he did. I think he's, that was his price the first time, and I believe it was the second time, and it came in under budget.
Good, quality work.
They're also a local contractor, are they
They're
not?
a local contractor, been around for as long as I've been here. Worked with them in private practice before this.
Mr. Fairley, was the scope of the work on this project, is it similar to what was being done at T.C. Robertson?
T.C. Robertson and North Buncombe are our pro starts. They have a slightly different program, and the equipment is different there than the other 3 high schools there. So,
And space was the indicator of what we could do?
yeah, we would have had to put an addition onto the other schools, and so we have kind of an academy system for the Pro Start.
So I guess where I was going with the question was, what the cost of those other 2 schools are that are in progress now. What the cost of the contract was, and is this contract, since we don't have anything else to compare it to, is it very similar? You don't see anything that would be out of the ordinary?
No, we had Anka, and we had bid Owen, which are comparable to AC Reynolds. We had those bids in place, so we had some historic data that we were able to set the budget for this project and establish the budget. So as long as, everything worked out, and if we had 3 bidders, we thought we had a good number. We had 1 bidder, we had a good number.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Fearley. I think you're up next. The next item on the action agenda is to authorize Article 4042 funds and lottery reallocations funds for HB 13 K through 3 capital improvements. We've already spoken to this some. Any other questions from the board?
I have a number of questions, Madam Chair, but I don't necessarily need to go first if others have some questions.
Doesn't look like it. Go ahead.
Mr. Fearley, at the end of page 1 in the recommendation, it mentions, let me find it, use of savings, authorizing the use of savings from completed projects. Those would be other Article 4042 projects that we may save some money from that could be used towards.
That's correct.
Correct. I just want to make sure it was there and not.
There won't be a whole lot.
39. Well, I know.
There's not a lot that are way under budget.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't Article 39 monies, because those monies
cannot be transferred,
They have to
right?
go back and can't be transferred. How much is in, so as I read this, the Article 4042 approved for this purpose, and then using contingency money to get through before the request for the lottery funds. Is that accurate?
Lottery funds and potentially Article 4042 from 1819.
But using some contingency funds to get this thing started, how do we leave enough contingency money for all the other projects that are going on across the county? Do you feel comfortable?
I believe so, as long as we do use that lottery that we're proposing. We've really tried to protect the contingency. And as we get closer to the end of the year and that contingency, remains, there's less likelihood that we'll need. Early in the year, you want a larger contingency. So I do feel comfortable that we'll have the funds for the normal unknowns that come up. If we have a very large issue that were to come up, what we would do is use that contingency, whatever is left, and any projects that were already funded that we haven't started, we would come to the board and ask the board to defer those projects if we had an emergency.
Okay. As I look at the HB 13 funding needs timeline, so what you're asking for today, date needed December 2017, funding amount needed $197,000, correct?
I believe that's
correct. On the left-hand side. When I add the funding source numbers together of $46,224 and $156,776, I come to $203,000. Can you help me with why the funding source amount is not the same amount as the funding amount needed?
Well, when we're transferring a project from the funding source for a project from 4042 to lottery, to find an exact match is difficult. So what we've done is found a project that's very close, and that happens to be a roofing project that's 180. And then in addition to the funds we have remaining that were already set aside from 4042, it gives us a little buffer contingency, and we can apply that to kind of that next phase if necessary.
I mean, I understand the 180,000, but it would seem to me that the numbers of 46,224 and 156,760, when you've specifically reallocated the lottery funding and approved for this purpose already, those, I'm not used to us, and maybe I've just missed it, and if I have, I've been a bad board member, but I'm just not used to that number not matching up with the amount needed when requests like this have been done in the past, and that's why it caught my attention. Because I, most of the time, try to go in and add those numbers together. So you've got in here, utilize Valley Springs Middle Roofing at $180,000.
Right.
If I take that number and add it to the 46,000,
Right.
then I'm 225 or so thousand.
Mm-hmm.
But you're asking for 197. I just want to make sure that what we're doing, if we allocate in more money, that we're doing this in the best way possible as stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, because this is public information, and I want to make sure that we're doing that properly. So
what it will do is reduce the next phase, if you will, with whatever is left over, and we won't have to transfer or, do the same thing the next time. Gives us a little bit of
that leads to my next question. So there are dollars here. Are we voting tonight on simply the 197 and for December, or are we also voting on the other dollar amounts? Because if we are, in fact, those numbers are likely to change, it sounds like, based on what you've just told me about the way these monies go together. So I just want to be clear as to what we're...
I believe the request is just to reallocate that $180,000, and then we would come back to you in the spring and make it correct with what we know at that time. We do ask for flexibility to use lottery funds, to use contingency funds if we have a problem that, an emergency that shows up. We are looking for some flexibility in the interim till we come back to you in the springtime to do that next phase.
And I appreciate that, and if this request was for double what it is, the total request is $675,600, I think I'd be all for it. It's not the amount of money. I just want to make sure that we're doing it properly in terms of where the dollars are coming and going. And then my last question deals with, you've identified some possible projects for reallocation to lottery. Mm-hmm. They total $1,030,000. The project scope at this point is $675,000. So there's 3, 6, 7 projects that are identified totaling $1,030,000. Is the explanation for that many simply the fact that until you know for sure how much we need, we don't really know which projects we will have to defer based upon what happens with roofing or the field house or the asbestos floor, which, in terms of priority and importance, somebody's going to have to make some decisions about which get deferred.
That's correct, and this just gives us a menu.
Okay.
A menu, it's not in priority order, but again, to try to match up those numbers of what we need in the spring, we have the types of projects that we may not be able to start or that would be good candidates. They're in that kind of dollar range. So yeah, it's beyond probably what we need this year, but it does show a menu for options, just so our numbers can be as close as possible.
That's what I thought it was, but I just wanted to clarify that when it got totaled up, that kind of threw me for a loop, and rather than just having them itemized. So I just wanted to make sure that was, and when further funding is needed, and you just answered this, but you guys, when you get to the springtime, you'll come back to the board to adjust these numbers, and we will.
And we'll adjust it. Okay. We did originally have another modular move in there, and that number is closer to the dollar, that number of projects is closer to that dollar amount if that modular move need to happen. And kind of when this was put together, we thought we might need to do that, but because of some strategies working with the school administration, curriculum and such, we found a way to kind of defer that one modular move that was really expensive to the future. And hopefully we won't have to do it, but if we do, there's some projects, if we all of a sudden had to do it, we could defer it, we could make it happen.
So just to point out what's also going on here then is that not only do we have to find $2.5 million to fund teachers, but we're also having to defer important maintenance projects. We're talking roofs, we're talking lead pipes, we're talking asbestos flooring. These are critical things that we're now having to defer.
Or potentially reallocate to lottery, because you can go back in time, a short amount of time, start a project that you know needs to be done, and change the funding source to lottery. So if there's a project in here we need to do right away, and some of them we do, we're going to get it started and go on, and then we can come back and retroactively. That's exactly what we're asking you to do with Valley Springs Middle School. It's 90% complete, and we're asking for that funding to change from 4042 to lottery, and that's okay. That's done.
Okay.
Is there a limit to the number of, does the lottery have any restrictions to the number of times you can go back and forth or reallocate?
Not the number of times, but there are restrictions on what you can use lottery for.
Right, okay.
There's a number of restrictions.
Right,
so
yeah. I just didn't
that's
know
one of the reasons, because there's technology involved, we can't just use 4042 for it. We're moving a project to lottery so that we can free up the less restrictive 4042 funds.
Right, I just didn't know if there was any other, about the specifics about what you could use it on, but I didn't know.
Modulars is one of those things you can't do with lottery. It happens to be one of our important strategies to meet HB 13.
And again, I think Mr. Bryant recognized that it's a cost issue. If you currently, such as the modular that we just placed at Glen Arden this year to address HB 13, $150,000. Now we already own that modular, but the permitting, the requirements in terms of IDEA or Tim, what?
ADA, you have to have a ramp, a covering, decks, fire alarm, low voltage.
All of that is.
Has to look like a classroom.
Yeah.
Restrooms, potentially.
Yeah. But we also have the timing issue, because it requires the permits, it requires the foundation work, and so a new modular, $200,000, but there's some advantages to having the new modular versus using your own. So the timing and cost, they're two separate issues that we have.
It's hard to get a modular right now because we're not the only school system going through this, and a modular is a strategy, and there's a limited number of modular companies out there, and we've seen that the hurricane issues in Texas and Florida have inflated prices of new modulars and extended the time it takes to get them.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Fearley, we always appreciate what you do. We know how difficult this job is. I mean, I don't have a clue how difficult the job is, but I can appreciate what you do and your staff. So hearing no questions from the board, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving right along. The next item on the agenda, sorry for the rattling of the paper, is the award of the sole source contract 32 GB iPad 9.7 fifth generation devices. Are there questions for Mr. Pace?
I have several, but I don't want to monopolize, so if
Oh,
others have
heavens.
some questions.
Come on down, Mr. Pace.
Shall I go first then if I have just
If
one
you
more
have,
measly
you go right
question?
ahead.
So this is the second round of the one-to-one devices, right? We've done K2 already, and now we're coming back around to them?
No, so on the digital learning plan timeline, what we're talking about here is actually phase 4. So phase 1 was January 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2016. That was all 4th, 5th, and 6th graders.
So we haven't done K2 yet?
Correct.
This
Phase
is the first
2
time
is
we've
7
done
through
K2.
9.
Okay.
And then 10th
Okay.
through 12th was this August, September.
Okay. And also, third grade and up have laptops. It's just K through 2 that have iPads, is that right?
So currently, 4th grade through 12th grade have the Yoga 11E.
Yeah.
Phase 4 does include the third graders, but that is a phased project from RFP 3115. And so that contract expires October 30th, 2018. So we will include all the third graders to receive the Yoga 11E
So they'll get, okay.
in August.
Okay.
So phase 4 is K3.
Uh-huh.
With
And
K2,
K2
the
are
choice
only
being
ones getting
iPad.
iPads.
Correct.
Everybody else has the Yoga. Okay.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bryant?
And that kind of is where so everybody else in Buncombe County Schools, maybe a history lesson, is the, what did you call it, Yoda?
Yoga.
Yoda? Is that
'Cause
what?
it's bendy,
Is that what I've
like
heard
yoga.
people refer to as a Surface Pro?
Possibly. We have the Lenovo ThinkPad Yoga 11E, which is the student education rugged Windows touchscreen that converts from a traditional laptop to a tablet.
And it's bendy like that, that's why they call it the Yoga.
But part of what we've done here as we've rolled this out is also equip our teachers and our administrators and folks in the library and a variety of, I think, I'm looking for a history lesson. Have we not also equipped those folks so that there is the ability to have interaction between those kids and students with a lot of different things, I think? Am I
Correct.
right in that?
Yes, all along the way, we've had what we call our best one-to-one professional development. And that has been cohorts that include all of the teachers in those grade levels. And along with that, we've done some different staff device refresh. The schools also are partners with us, obviously, in the staff device refresh. And one of the staff device refreshes that we did last year was all of the K3 M-Class teacher iPads. So all of our K3, which includes our K2 teachers that will be going, whose students will be going one-to-one in August, they have a new iPad so that they're ready to roll when the students get theirs in August.
I guess let me just get to my question. My concern is, and it may be unfounded, it seems like we now have, and maybe we have multiple systems, are the iPads going to be able to communicate with other folks in the building who have a different device. And my concern is specifically, if all the teachers already have devices in those elementary schools, and now you go in there with iPads, what does that do to the art teacher who has a different device in communicating with those K-2 students? What does that do with the music teacher, the health and physical education teacher, perhaps someone in the front office, administrators? How are we
talking to each other?
How are we talking to each other and best utilizing the equipment that we're putting in their hands so that we don't have something that we can't use? And obviously, this specifically applies to an elementary school because K-2 is not in middle and high school.
Right.
So have we looked at that, and specifically with those specialist teachers, special ed teachers, folks that come from the central office, maybe into a school, there's a lot of different things other than just that classroom teacher that are involved in educating those kids. And I just want to make sure that we're not creating a problem for those specialist teachers and
enhancement
others.
teachers.
Yeah.
So last year we did refresh 440 staff iPads, K-3, and we did include II teachers, for example. However, we were not able to include every enhancement teacher. It certainly included every homeroom teacher. Our hope there was that, given the fact that all of those K-3 homeroom and other teachers, they already had an iPad 2. Obviously, it was aging at that point, but there were also some additional iPads that had been purchased by the school as refresh by the schools, such that it was our feeling that those more recent iPads that had been purchased by the schools for those grade level teachers, that those devices would be able to be passed over to the music and art, so that we were covering all of our K-3 teachers. So our K-2 teachers will have been avid users of iPads for many years now, since M-Class became a requirement, M-Class assessments, now reading 3D. We worked hard with the MTAC to gauge the preferences of our staff and polled the staff. The preferences in the lower grade levels, certainly in kindergarten, first grade, were very clear towards the iPad. Second grade was more 50-50 in that. But when we look at the ease of use of the iPad for kindergarten, first and second graders in terms of things like the weight of the device, the fact that you power on the device, there's no login that you have to type, a 7, 8, 9, 10 digit number or password. And then, of course, the applications that are available on the iPad are typically what you refer to the most when you look at case studies where there's been growth in reading, math, in those one-to-one type of rollouts.
And I understand that and appreciate that. I guess I'm not conveying my concern well enough. My concern is that art teacher at Estes Elementary School, who's been there now for the rollout, the 4th through 6th grade or 4th and 5th graders and they're using a different device.
So is your concern that PCs and iPads are not going to be able to
I
communicate
don't know
with
if
each
they
other?
are communicating with each other. What I don't want to have is I want them to be able to communicate with all the students without a teacher being told, an art teacher being told, well, we got you the equipment initially that worked for 4th and 5th, but we're not able to provide you the iPad. So for you to be able to communicate with those K1 and 2 students, you're going to need to bring your own device or something else happen. That's what I don't want to have happen. That's what I'm looking for, is to make sure that as a school system, we're supporting everybody with this as we roll it out and not missing anybody in the cracks. And that's my question.
Understood, and I appreciate the clarification and the question there. And so Yes, I agree with you. The enhancement teachers, the teachers who may be at the upper grade levels in the schools that have grade 4, grade 5, grade 3, who, rotate courses and work with the students in K2. I agree with you. Yes, we need to make sure that they have, like the K3 teachers, the devices that they need, given the fact that may mean 2 devices, just like our K3 teachers have. So we do have some, assessment with Reading 3D at the 4th grade. So some, those teachers are already doing that. So I'll, for sure work with principals, work with Dr. Baldwin, Mrs. Swanger, and we'll work through that and figure it out. Just like we work really hard to figure out, for example, any of our students who need a specific device because of accessibility, which we have, 19, 20 of those in the 4th through 12th grade.
Well, I guess so. So it sounds like then this request and dollar amount may not take care of all that, and I would ask maybe Dr. Baldwin and you together, we might not be able to do it, but if, I think I would at least like to know, and maybe other board members would as well, to make, I don't know what the right term, to make everybody whole in terms of the people in the school and all, to have the ability. So we've got a big check and we've got unlimited amount of money. I know that's not the case, but to have an analysis, it doesn't have to be overly complex, but something that to say, Mr. Bryant, based on your concerns and maybe other board members' concerns, here's what it would take to do that. It would take $12.48, or it would take $2 million. I don't know what the number is, but it concerns me specifically because we spent the first part of the evening and we just had another with classroom space, and the people that are really going to be impacted, I'm afraid, as we deal with House Bill 13 and the K-3 class size mandate, are those specialist teachers.
And HB?
So I just, it's on my radar and I'm concerned about it, and I just want to make sure that we do everything we can for all those folks. And I got to believe that we've got, I know the schools that I go in, there are people that come from the central office, from other places with devices in their hands that may not be in a school but a week or once a week, but if they've got to go and interact with 4 second graders and they need to be able to do something on a device, I want to make sure they're able to do it if we can financially do it as a system.
And of course, you alluded to House Bill 13, certainly putting a lot of pressure on
I get it.
Us in all areas, including the Digital Learning Initiative. And
so those are the reason for my questions, if there's some.
We'll definitely do due diligence on determining the number of those enhancement teachers that weren't already addressed in the 440 unit refresh that we did last year of staff iPads. And we'll keep working on all of the different sources of funding. I'm not bringing the carts for K3 to you tonight because I'm rebidding those as we speak. So we didn't.
Well, nothing would make me happier than you to come to us in January and say, we've looked at it system-wide and we're good, that we don't need anything else. That would be perfect. I just want to make sure we've taken a look at that.
I think it's a valuable issue. I'm imagining the administrator in an elementary school K-5, because we don't have intermediates in all of the districts. And so, they're going to be administrating K-3 classrooms where you're using iPads, and then they're going to go into 4th and 5th. But we've talked previously about the ability to interchange. I think many of us do now. We use iPad, we use a PC version of desktop, and so, but it's certainly something we can come back with some information to the board, Mr. Bryant. I think it's a valid concern.
Thank you for your thoughts and your information. That was all I had, Madam Chair.
I have just a couple more questions, and I know this, the thought of the PC and Windows-based platform versus the Apple, the Mac-based platform. That can be an argument. Some people like one, some people like the other. But I think those that like the Apple-based products, if you're starting your kindergarten group with the Apple, I can hear it now. When they get pass through out of second or third grade, and then they're put into the PC platform, I can hear those parents who are adamant about the Apple product saying, why are you taking a step backwards? Why are you taking them out of the Apple area and now putting them into a PC-based product? I see that maybe as a problem. But aside from that, we could argue that. We can argue beta versus VHS. That was an argument 40 years ago too. But the other thing is, were these, in your choice of the product, did you hold these to the military specs as far as durability and that kind of thing? That's a question I want to ask. And then secondly, I'd like to, maybe you're not prepared tonight, Barry, but I would like to know, based upon our experience we've had thus far with those Lenovo products, are they holding up as expected, or are we getting a lot of problems with them?
Sure. So to start with the Yoga 11E, the break rate on that is holding under 5%, which is great. That was our goal.
Good.
And we are, in fact, repairing all of those devices in-house, which is working well. We're able to make those repairs quickly and return those devices into service very quickly, doing it in-house. And at the scale we're talking, the number of devices, being able to self-insure, repair in-house is really the way to go. And we've learned through the process of doing that.
And let me interject something here. That's another question I have. By changing or having two different products, and I'm just thinking from the standpoint of servicing, you're going to have your guys brought up to speed on servicing the Apple product. You're going to have Apple geniuses, like you go to the store to get whatever. Right. But you're also going to have to stock the parts and that kind of thing. And I just want to make sure that all of that has been considered as making this decision as well.
It has. We already have in-house repair for iPads. We've had that for some time.
Okay.
Staffing is never what you would ideally like it to be. Having said that, the team has done an amazing job. We are truly blessed to have the field technicians and the network and digital learning, low voltage. The team is absolutely unbelievable. We are currently stocking all the parts that we need on the Yoga 11E. When we find that you can no longer order a part, we buy new because of the price we negotiated, and we cannibalize that machine. And so we're able to keep the parts on the shelf for the field technicians, and plan to do the same thing the same way with the Apple products. We're doing professional development for the teams on that. So the mobile device management administrators, the Apple technicians, the Apple repair, they are doing workshops as we speak. So I think we have 2 or 3 this week. And, a lot of that is generated from our in-house expertise. We certainly will evaluate where we stand with staffing when we're one-to-one K-12, which is part of our goal from the beginning. We knew this would be a phased approach, and that there would be things that we would learn as we go. So the big thing about the iPad at K2 is that it is a strong recommendation from MTAC, our Media and Technology Advisory Committee, and primarily it's about the educational opportunities and experiences for curriculum instruction and for our teachers and our students at K2. At the 3rd grade, our staff, MTAC, strongly feels that a Windows-based device, and we want all of our devices to be touchscreen so that it's a transition from a touchscreen iPad to a touchscreen Windows device. But we have felt, that the Windows platform for our older students is the platform that affords the most opportunities for learning without compromising in any area beyond what that platform will allow. And so that's the reason we chose not to go with Chromebooks. And not compromising on what we want the students to be able to experience in K2 is equally a part of that decision. So ramping up to make sure the staff have the devices they need, make sure the people are in place and the equipment is in place. It's all part of it and making it work. But the decisions are based on curriculum and instruction. And so, I don't know if I
And as far as
am
the
able to
military
capture it
specs
all.
or the
But
standard you held the Lenovo products to when you're evaluating them for purchase, you shared with us the results of that product, but was that same testing done for these Apple products that you're buying?
So, I will address the next item on your agenda with this answer. So, the iPad, of course, is a device that comes in one flavor. Also, the iPad Pro, of course, which we're not considering. But in terms of the 5th generation iPad 9.7 inch, it comes in one model, and educational institutions purchase that from Apple. What we've done is we've selected a case from Brent Haven that does meet the mil spec for the drop test rating. And it has the type of edges that aren't easy to peel and pick at and damage over time from use in that regard. And so it has a screen protector on it. It's got all the things in place that you would like to have with a case that you want to last for 4 years and want to protect the devices in order to limit the amount of screen breaks because you are breaking glass and peeling shards of glass when you're repairing a screen on an iPad. So the case that we have selected is mil-spec tested, and it is the case that is receiving the best data and feedback from one-to-ones where they have iPads using that case versus some other cases that we looked at. So, we're looking forward to using that case with the iPad and joining at least 8 other districts in North Carolina that are one-to-one K2 iPad. Some of them are additional grade levels too, but that list right now includes Rowan Salisbury, Rutherford, Craven, Mitchell, Avery, Mooresville, Macon, and Greene that we know of. I'm sure there are others. So the case is really what makes it mil-spec. 6-foot drop.
Thank you.
Other questions by the board?
I just want to go on a field trip over there where they're doing all
I believe it's cheaper for us to go on a field trip than it is for us to pay for these things. So, hearing no further questions from the board, then I would entertain a motion to approve and award this item for these devices.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the award of the sole source contract for the 32 gigabyte iPad 9.7 inch 5th generation devices.
Thank you for reading that. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I just want to say, Mr. Queen, what we're doing is creating global learners. If they can do an Apple and then they can do the other, they're global. The next item on the agenda is to award the contract K-12 for student iPad cases. Do we have questions on that item? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Pace. The
Thank you,
next
Madam Chair.
item is class size waiver, and we're seeking a motion to approve the submission of the waiver Form B in the enhancement curricular area, class size waiver request to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. I did have a conversation with all of you regarding this item recently.
So this has already been submitted, is that correct? And we're basically ratifying what's already been submitted?
Yes, it was a time crunch kind of
Right.
thing. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. It worries me when you don't do that. And for a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, the item that we added to this agenda, which is the approval of low-performing school plans. We received information on this at the work session last month, and we also received information on this this week from Ms. Matthews. I would entertain a motion to approve. Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now moving to the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda include the minutes from November 9 special called session, the minutes from November 9 regular session, the personnel report, school nutrition procurement plans for 17-18. We have to, the facsimile stamp for the board chair's signature, and policies for second reading. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The information agenda that you've been given is the financial reports from Ms. Frisbee, and the announcement of our next board meeting is January the 11th, here in the Minotaurium at 6:30. I would also entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Any, Jim, can I see? Can Did you go outside and smell to see what?